You don't get to mourn her now, Zhang Linghe explodes after Bailu collapses on set. A heartbreak that was years in the making. It happened in a moment. A blink. 1 second, Bailu was smiling through a retake. The next, she was lying unconscious on the studio floor, her body limp, makeup smudged with tears, and a terrified scream echoing off the walls of the soundstage. And as the crew scrambled for medics and assistants fumbled with phones, 2 men ran toward her, both desperate, both breathless, but only one with the right to hold her. Zhang Linghe, her longtime partner. And Wang, the ghost of the love she never quite let go. A fragile heart breaks on set. The shoot was going into its 13th hour. Bailu had insisted on continuing, despite clear signs of fatigue, trembling hands, delayed responses, and a voice that cracked with every line she delivered. But no one expected what happened next. She clutched her chest during a retake, stumbled backward mid-dialogue, and collapsed without a word. The studio lights seemed to dim instantly as panic took over. She just dropped, a crew member whispered, still shaken. No sound. No warning. Just tears running down her face. By the time the on-site medic reached her, she had no pulse for several seconds. The moment Dylan showed up. What no one expected was that Wang arrived within minutes. He wasn't scheduled to be on set. No one called him. Yet somehow, he knew. A source close to the production revealed, someone from Bailu's team had texted him after seeing her break down in the dressing room earlier. He was already driving there before the collapse even happened. Dylan pushed past security, his face pale, breath ragged. He dropped to his knees beside her gurney, grabbing her hand like a man clinging to the last thing he ever loved. But then, another figure stormed in. Zhang Linghe. The man who stayed. The man who watched her fall apart piece by piece, and never left her side. You don't get to mourn her now. The moment Linghe saw Dylan clutching Bailu's hand, something inside him snapped. You don't get to mourn her now, he shouted, ripping Dylan away from the gurney. Where were you when she cried herself to sleep for months? When she blamed herself every single day for your silence? Dylan didn't fight back. He stood there, breathing hard, guilt flooding every inch of his face. I never stopped loving her, he whispered. Zhang's voice broke into something deeper, not anger anymore, but agony. Then why did you leave her like she didn't matter? There was silence. Then a single scream, Bailu's, from the hospital gurney as she stirred back to consciousness. Her first words, don't let them fight. Paramedics shouted as Bailu's vitals returned. Her eyes fluttered open for a second, tears trailing from the corners. She whispered, brokenly. Don't let them fight. And then passed out again. Both men froze. And in that moment, the weight of their shared guilt crashed down on them like a tidal wave. They had fought so hard for her love. But none of it mattered if they lost her. Flashbacks of a love torn apart. What followed at the hospital that night was silence between enemies. Both men sat outside ICU in different corners of the hallway, staring into space. Zhang Linghe, the one who stayed through it all. Who picked up the pieces after Dylan walked away. Who held her hand through the nightmares and kissed her forehead when she cried without explanation. Wang, the man who left to protect her, only to realize too late that she was his entire world. His marriage to Shen Yu, the cold walls he built, all meaningless in the face of her collapsed body in his arms. She never stopped checking your social media, Linghe finally said, eyes forward. Dylan didn't reply. And I never stopped fearing she'd leave the moment you looked back. A letter no one was supposed to read. Later that night, Bailu's manager arrived with a journal she had been writing in during the filming process. It was meant to help her mentally prepare for a complex role, but it held much more than acting notes. Inside was a letter addressed to no one. I'm tired of being the battlefield between two men who both broke me in different ways. Zhang saved me. He gave me peace. But there's still a part of me that aches when Dylan's name is whispered on set. I don't want to choose anymore. I want silence. I want peace. I want to stop hurting just to prove who I belong to. Both men read it. Neither spoke. Backlash and public outcry. The next day, a leaked photo of Dylan and Zhang arguing beside Bailu's stretcher hit the internet, and netizens erupted. Hashtag let her heal. Hashtag Dylan go home. Hashtag protect Bailu. Hashtag Zhang deserves better. Some blamed Dylan. Others blamed the industry's pressure on actresses. A few, though, saw the pain in both men's eyes and simply said, maybe neither of them were ever enough for a woman who gave too much of herself away. The ICU scene that changed everything. When Bailu finally woke up again, both men were at her bedside. Silent. Waiting. She looked at Zhang first. His eyes were rimmed with red, his hand outstretched. Then at Dylan. A man she hadn't truly seen this close in nearly a year. He looked older. Tired. But still hers in ways she couldn't unlove. Her lips trembled. I can't breathe when both of you are here. That was all it took. Zhang stood up. His smile was sad, broken, but accepting. I'll wait outside, he said softly. Dylan stood too, chest tight. So will I. And they both left. What happens now? As of this moment, Bailu remains under observation in ICU for extreme emotional and physical fatigue. Zhang Linghe has paused all schedules to remain close to her side. Dylan Wang has returned to his hotel. Sources say he hasn't spoken to anyone, not even Shenyu. Shenyu herself has unfollowed Dylan on social media. The story is no longer about who she loves. It's about whether she'll choose to come back at all, to either of them. Final words. You don't get to mourn her now, wasn't just a cry of pain. It was the sound of a man protecting the woman he stayed for, from the one who left. But maybe, they both failed her in different ways. And maybe this time, Bailu will rise not to run back into anyone's arms, but to finally walk away from both. Because she deserves peace. And perhaps for the first time, she's ready to choose herself. The hospital corridor still smelled of antiseptic and silence. Outside Bailu's ICU room, the air was suffocating, not from grief alone, but from the unbearable tension between two men who once meant everything to her. Inside that room, behind the glass doors, Bailu remained unconscious, monitors beeping steadily, her pale face ghost-like against the hospital pillow. Outside, Zhang Linghe leaned forward in his chair, elbows on knees, head in his hands. Across from him, Dylan Wang stood, unmoving, staring blankly at a crack in the tiled floor. Neither had spoken in over 20 minutes. But silence never lasts long when guilt is involved. She collapsed because of you, Linghe finally muttered, his voice barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to cut. Dylan's jaw clenched. You think I don't know that? Then why were you there? Zhang snapped, rising to his feet. Why did you come running the second she fell, like you had any right to be the one holding her hand? Dylan looked up slowly, his eyes red-rimmed, dark with sleeplessness. Because I felt it. Zhang paused. I felt something was wrong. I didn't know what, Dylan exhaled shakily. I couldn't breathe until I saw her again. Zhang's face twisted, a mix of rage and heartbreak. You're still doing it, he growled. Still acting like your connection with her gives you permission to haunt her. She doesn't need your instincts, Dylan. She needed your presence, back when she was breaking. Flashback, the last time she broke down. 2 weeks earlier, Bailu had locked herself in her dressing room after an emotionally demanding scene. Crew members knocked, but she didn't respond. Only Zhang had the passcode. He found her curled on the floor, shoulders shaking in silence, whispering, "I'm fine," over and over again. What she never told anyone was that the scene reminded her of Dylan, the moment in her last drama, where her character let go of a love she never fully healed from. Zhang didn't ask. He just held her. But even then, he knew. Back in the hospital, when the nurse came out, the sound of the ICU doors swinging open pulled both men out of the storm in their heads. A nurse stepped out, removing her gloves. "She's stable," she said gently. "But she's asking for someone." Zhang Linghe stepped forward instinctively. "Me?" The nurse hesitated. Then shook her head. She said, "Tell Dylan to stop apologizing in his head. If he has something to say, he can say it to my face." Zhang's entire body stiffened. Dylan looked just as shocked. He hadn't said a word to her since she fainted, yet somehow, she felt him. Zhang's final warning. As Dylan stepped toward the doors, Zhang Linghe placed a hand firmly on his chest. "You go in there," he said, voice low and trembling, "and you say your truth. All of it. Because if you hurt her again, even by accident, I won't be the one pulling punches next time." Dylan nodded, eyes heavy. "I'm not here to win her back," he said. "I'm here to finally stop breaking her." And then, slowly, he disappeared behind the doors, walking into the room where their past still waited, fragile and unfinished.